Hey everybody, I am Richard Thomas.
And I'm Tiffany Thomas.
I want to welcome you to the Lionheart Institute podcast. We are in the middle of talking about Black History Month. It is February 2021. We are coming off the heels of one of the craziest years in world history.
So true.
Maybe a year that we hope to never see again.
Yeah.
Right? The racial division, the racial tension, some would even say the racial hate that was stirred in 2020 that hit the surface was maybe like no other year in modern day history.
For sure.
And the leadership that led us through those tumultuous waters was absolutely lacking.
Yeah.
Right now in 2021, we're hoping for a new rebirth of awareness of diversity and appreciation for one another, but it's clearly evident in old regimes they were trying to take away diversity training. It is painfully clear that we don't need to take it away. We are at an age and a stage and a season in American history where we need to increase it and make it a higher priority.
We need far more of it.
Right. And I am so thankful for the diversity of our audience, right?
Yeah.
When we look at how beautiful our Lionheart Institute podcast community is, we're so blessed to be a part of it, and we're so blessed that you're a part of it. We're so thankful for each one of you that participate. But it's very unique, the perceptions and the perspectives that our audience brings together.
Yeah.
Right? I have a great following from the inner city. Some country folks, some redneck folks, some people, and I just throw out kind of labels in the sense of general areas of the country.
Right.
When you look at kind of the breakdown of our demographic that watches us, they're kind of from the four corners of our country, our country, and then somewhat around the world. So it's really, really exciting to hear perspectives. And so when we start to get likes and we start to get comments on our board, I take those extremely seriously.
Yeah.
Right. And so last week we did a topic that was really, really important to us on current events. Right. And while talking about it, you brought up probably the funniest punchline that we've had in any of our introductions in a very long time. You're not sorry, you're
a fucking racist.
And that lit up our board.
It did.
Right? And so we had one guy stood out to me significantly, a guy I've respected for a long time. And he had some questions.
Yeah.
Right? And so could you lead our audience through a little bit of that? Because we want you to know that when you do throw us, and a lot of people will not necessarily put in the comments, but they'll send us an email. And you'll read them, and we'll digest them and think about them and contemplate them. And but we want to let you know that you're on our minds, and the way that we respond is important to us. So we may actually introduce this as a segment, or just begin to build some of our portfolio off of the interaction that we have. So share a little bit about what we went through, or what was shared.
Yeah, as Richard said, we greatly value you as viewers and subscribers, and when you comment, we do listen and we do respond. And so we got a comment from somebody who was actually a new subscriber, and he was asking us some questions in regarding the video that we did. So he said, "So I listened to a part of this latest podcast, and you have some good points. But you do not bring up any counter arguments. Now, the N-word will never be said by me or any member of my family. That word should be removed from the language altogether.
Thank you.
I guess I am wanting your opinion on rap artists saying that word. Not just black people listen to rap, everyone does. The rap industry is full of this word and also glorification of the gang lifestyle and of violent acts such as shootings, rape, beatings, and the list goes on. What is your opinion of the hate and racist comments made by Nick Cannon? He said sorry and got his job back, but your focus on this country singer, Morgan, who was saying this to some black friends after a long evening of drinking with them. Why can't Morgan say sorry and get his contract back with the record label?" And Jeff, thank you so much for your comment and asking questions. And we wanted to do this video, one, because it's important with Black history as well, because this is a pretty significant part of culture. But also to further talk about your questions, to maybe dive into a little bit different of a conversation than we had in the last video.
Right. And it's really important that we do. If there was something that I am guilty of with the Trump era, probably, and really when we started our channel, right? is our opinions of Trump were so very strong
Right.
that we didn't really offer very many counter
True.
viewpoints, right?
Yeah, true.
Particularly being predominantly Republican for most of our stature,
Right.
voting stature.
Yeah.
For us, he was such a flip side of
Yeah.
the Republican Party. We just went all in Democrat, right?
Right.
And so I respect the opposite opinion, because if you don't have the opposite opinion, it's very difficult to even know why you believe what you believe and stand for what you stand for. So thank you for bringing that up, and thank you, audience, for participating and being engaged in that way.
And it's really important to be able to have an open dialogue about uncomfortable topics.
So good.
And, we've talked about that sometimes the only way that you see change and understanding is to have those uncomfortable conversations and real conversations about topics that people are kind of it's a little taboo, or they're leery of really.
Sure.
Because not everybody really wants the truth. They think they want the truth, or they want a version, or they just want you to agree with them.
Right.
And so
I think that's the latter is the most popular.
I think so too. I would definitely agree with that topic, that most people just want you to agree with their opinions. But you and I are very outspoken, and so we're not going to just agree to agree. But we are not afraid of taking these head on either and talking about the truth of them.
And I want to clarify for the audience, when it comes to Morgan, for instance, right? I don't know what his last name is.
The country singer.
I don't listen to a ton of country music. However, this country music singer, I was never purporting that he should ever lose wages.
Right.
I was never purporting that the guy should ever be fired, that he should lose contracts. I just laughed at number one. And then agreed with number two.
Right.
Your statement, you're not sorry.
Right.
You're a
fucking racist.
God, that just cracks me the fuck up. Say it.
And, to point out, too, again, like you said, his consequences of saying that came from his employer, came from who he is in society, and this isn't the first time he has said it either and been caught for it.
And that's very important.
And I think that's important to understand. Saying it once, again, I still believe that it's not a word that accidentally comes out of your mouth. But
it isn't.
But, saying it once is one thing, to be sorry about it, and then you never say it again. But this is the second time in 4 months that this has come out, that he has said something racist. And
there's a hilarious skit on YouTube, which is where we're here,
right.
And it's a white comedian and a black comedian, and the white guy owes the black guy money, and so the black guy comes to collect his money.
So funny.
And the white guy has brought essentially a anger management speaker for him, and so every time he goes to say the N-word, the black gentleman says the N-word for him. And it really is it's a picture really of how the N-word has evolved, and it's changed over the years, right? Can you talk about a little bit from your perspective, because I know for the first time probably in your entire history, other than when you were part of the KKK, which is a great episode, you should check that out, but other than when you were the KKK, you probably never heard the N-word really spoken on a regular basis until we moved in with each other. And then, while I don't purport the use of the N-word, I will dialogue a little bit about why you shouldn't use the N-word. Even as a black person, it's just not good to say my neighbor. But when you're hearing the N-word on a regular basis, talk a little bit about why it hurts you when you first kind of started hearing it, knowing the history of it, growing up, how you grew up. Attending actually KKK meetings as a child, meeting Paul Mooney, him being a big part of your kind of thought process as you grew up and introduced into your family. Share that a little bit, because I think it's good perspective coming from a Caucasian.
Well, if you had a chance to watch our Justice in America video, I talk a lot about it. But, I grew up in the South. It's where I was born and lived for the first several years of my life. And I had family members that were part of the KKK. And I remember at ages 4 and 5 going to meetings with them. And then, fast forward a few years.
Just a little yeehaw fun.
No big deal. So I remember moving to Washington State from the South with my mom, and I was about 6 years old at the time. And I remember being in Washington and walking down the street with my mom, and I saw a black person on the other side of the street, and I pointed at him and I said, "Look, Mommy, it's a N-word." And that was normal. That's what I was taught that we called.
That's not normal.
Well,
but.
Yes, it was normal for where I was at and what I was being taught.
Right, sure.
That was normal.
It was normal
to me.
for the world that was being presented.
Yes, for sure. So, of course, my mom, growing up in Africa, being a missionary's kid, was appalled beyond words to hear that word come out of her baby girl's mouth. And she didn't even know what to say at that point. She genuinely just was shock and awe. And I didn't understand why she was so upset, And so, that was the one and only time that word had ever come out of my mouth at that point. And, I never said it again after that moment, because I realized
Your mom did a good job of teaching you that it was inappropriate.
Right. We really had a long conversation as best as I could understand at that age. And then Washington was a lot more diverse, obviously, than in the South where I grew up. So, as you said, Paul Mooney was a good friend of my mom's and somebody that I met, and was very scary to a small child at first.
But do you remember him using it? Because he uses it like it's ice in his cup.
Yes.
Right?
So we weren't allowed for a long time to watch his stand-up comedy because of the language that he uses. And as we got older, he would always send us his videos or his CDs, so we could hear him. And he had some of the funniest stuff. Holy cow! But yeah, he does use the N-word a lot. And so of course my mom still, again, as we grew, had to kind of explain that, we still weren't allowed to say it. It wasn't okay for us to use it.
And we're going to share this a little bit, right? We talk about it a little bit in this video to come, but really one of the key people who helped flip the word was Paul Mooney's best friend, co-worker, however you kind of put that together, Richard Pryor.
Yeah.
And so his skits on the use of N-word, his ability to be comfortable with it, his dialogue with Bill Cosby, who called him and told him, "Don't you use," over that accent, I don't know what it is, "Don't you use that word," right?
Yeah.
And Richard Pryor telling him to F himself, right? I'm going to call whoever I want to the N-word, right? He really is part of that kind of movement of trying to strip the word of its contextual power, which we'll talk a little bit about, how it contextually became charged with hate and that energy, and really reversing it as an empowerment word, right? But
and then moving into our relationship, and I now had older stepchildren who use that word quite frequently, and with the A ending instead of the ER ending, and that was just a normal conversation for them. That was a lot to digest, because I understood the severity of the word, of what it meant, of where it came from, and so I didn't understand why Black people would even want to say it. And so for me, I really struggled for a while, thinking I just don't get it. I understand why we can't say it, but why do you want to say it? And so, and then on top of that, we had our son, very white son in this mixed family, who is being brought up with older siblings who are using...
Who I disciplined with the word today. I'm going to have to admit what I have to admit. And I was like, what am I doing?
Yeah. But, we have him where he can never say that word.
Yeah.
But his siblings say it. His dad says it, but he can't ever say it.
Right.
So it's definitely... the dynamics of that, especially with the mixed family, is difficult.
Let me rewind. I don't want to interrupt you because you're on a good flow and I want you to stay in this flow. It's not that you can't use it.
Right.
It's just if you're going to use it, you better also know how to fight.
Yeah, because he's going to get his ass beat.
Right. Or he's going to have to represent.
Or he's going to have to beat somebody's ass. And, because people aren't going to know just meeting him that he's got a Black dad, that he's got, mixed siblings. And, most people aren't going to know that unless they know us all very well. So it does present complications and a very different dialogue. And
conflict.
Yeah. Because, he's young. He just turned 10 this month. And so, he has used the word a few times, especially, I remember getting a phone call from one of his friend's mom who said that, I don't know if you know, but he kind of said it. And she wasn't offended or anything by it, but she just wanted me to know that...
Which she should have been.
Right. Like, that he was comfortable, thinking he was tough being away from mom and dad and he could use the word. So we had to address that because obviously there's a lot of sensitive issues that come along with that, and it does make it difficult with the dynamics.
And we're talking Black history.
Yes.
So let's give it some context. Obviously, it's from Nigeria, right? Sure, lengthened out, double G'd, right? It goes from Niger to Nigger, right? It's racially charged with hate.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that. I mean, from your interaction, and I'll dialogue about it a little bit as well. But historically, when you hear that word, kind of give some perspective to that.
Well, I think that it's important for people to truly understand the meaning of that word as far as contextually here in the United States. I think because that is where it really started to change and be used for something other than what it was. And so you have to look at it from that perspective, and you have to understand this word was used by white slave owners to literally strip people from their humanity.
I think it's interesting as you say that, because it created a whole demographic of people, right? In stripping them, right, of their culture, stripping them of their identity. They then tagged them or associated them with a word of empty, void negativity, right? And so they associated it with the word. Obviously, you kind of have the historical perspective of even the word black, void of light,
right?
No truth. You've got the whole. If Ali was not one of your favorite fighters of all time, he should be judged for his piece on,
right?
Black Sheep and his whole dialogue about that, which was so powerful. Get on Google and start searching that out, because it's a great thing. But void of light, no hope, right? Desperate and angry, and then you have white represented by, goodness and holiness and purity, right? And so, but now you take it to the next level from black to the hard ER at the end of this word. And conceptually, it was changed it was used to break the will and the mind of the person of color.
Right, and it was used to remind them of their place.
Their stature.
Yes, and the fact that they were considered less than. And they wanted them to always remember that. Because, look, the truth is, America was built on white supremacy. And so they needed to continue that. They needed to continue that standard to where there would never be a question that any of the slaves would think that they were any type of equal to any of them.
Right.
And so when you understand that, I want you to think about that. For some people, some enslaved person, that may have been the last thing that they heard before they died. That was the last thing that they were called before they were beaten. And, it leaves such an impression into a person's psyche that it's not something that you just ever forget.
Well, you talk about word association, and you hear that word being echoed.
Yes.
And then you see a person lynched.
Right.
You see a person tarred and feathered.
Yeah.
You see, a beautiful black man dragged down the street and lynched. But that word is an association with ultimate power over you.
Yeah.
Right? And so when you think about that, you're so very right. It's a word association that the world has kind of used in different ways. You go to South Africa, and the word wasn't Nigger, but it was cafe or whatever it is, right? And see, it's not relevant to me. I have no association with the word.
Right.
I don't even know what the word truly is, so it flows off my tongue like it's nothing, right? I don't have an association with the power of white people in South Africa over the black people in South Africa, even though their apartheid was almost in some ways equally, if not greater, even than African Americans here in our own country.
Right.
But I have an association or a connection to the understanding of the word, as does nearly everyone in our country. Right. And so it becomes a question, who can really say the N-word? Right.
Yeah. I think the problem is there's a huge double standard in white America. And the problem is we created the word, right? And how we use it in this country. We used it And then it no longer became acceptable because it was a racist statement, right? It was derogatory, it was hateful. So we could no longer use this word. However, people of color took this word, they changed it,
through people like Paul Mooney and Richard
brought
Pryor
new meaning to it, and now use it all the time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So then white people are faced now with this situation. Well, wait a minute. Like, if we can't say it, well, you shouldn't be able to say it either.
And which is funny to me, and I'd like you to address this, because to me, this comes off as a trigger word,
Yeah.
right? As white privilege, right?
Yeah.
If white people can't use it, my God, then no one can use it. See how my voice changed right there? I don't exactly know why that happens, but it does.
It totally does.
But white people do that on a regular basis.
Yeah.
If anyone can use it, they can use it.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone has access to it, they should have access to
Right.
it. But if someone they don't have access to it, then no one should be able to use it. Right.
Now, there's plenty of white people out there, because we've seen them all over TV or, just everywhere, who have no issue feeling like they are entitled to be able to say that word. If you're going to say it, I'm going to say it. Mm-hmm. And that's my right. That's my entitlement to be able to do that. So we do see a lot of that. Now, look, my personal opinion is I detest that word. Mm-hmm. And especially when you understand what it was used for, I absolutely despise that word. And so to hear anybody use it, to me, just breaks my heart.
Do you think there's ever a time that you've accidentally used it?
No. No, because it is a word that you consciously have to actually think about to use.
You have to energize it,
because
right?
This word has meaning to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's invoked by an emotion. So it's not an accident that you say it. It's just not.
Even as a person of color, I don't think I've ever accidentally said it. It's not
right.
like, it's not like I wake up and say, "Hey, pass me a glass of water," mm-hmm. right? I have to consciously attach it to a reason to say the word.
Right.
Right? And there certainly is ways that you say it so often, you hear it so often, that it becomes packed so deep in your subconscious mind that it becomes a part of your natural language. I get that, right? However, if you're not in that vein, you don't ever accidentally say it.
No,
right?
you don't.
And so, and we're going to get to that a little bit, and when we talk about rap music
mm-hmm.
and the power of music to begin to NLP, neuralistic language programming, mm-hmm. right? That's very possible in our lives, and junk in, junk out. They kind of say, right? What we program our mind with is what's going to come out of our mouth. Mm-hmm. I understand all those elements, and not only black people listen to rap music, but there's some very relative things that are going in those storytelling dialogues that are happening. Mm-hmm. That's important to consider as well, right?
Absolutely.
And so,
I think a lot of people's perspectives, especially if you are Caucasian, is that we just need to get rid of the word. It just needs to be gone. It should never be said in our language at all, and it should be gone.
You think that's out of just pure embarrassment, or do
So,
you think?
I think there's a couple reasons, actually. I think that you're looking at two different perspectives. One, it's the double standard. Well, if I can't say it anymore, then you shouldn't be allowed to be saying it, right? And so, or if you can say it, then I should be allowed to say it. So I think we have that double standard. That's part of the issue.
That entitlement.
Entitlement that I should be able to do this. And then I think the other issue that comes into play is people want to get rid of it because they, again, want to erase our history of things that are uncomfortable, that put white people in an uncomfortable light.
And so if the word isn't said, then it never existed.
Right.
If it never existed, then it never could have been that bad.
Right. We can just act like it didn't ever happen.
Right.
Nobody says it anymore. And then we kind of just move on and erase the fact that it was a horrible word used for a very specific, awful reason. And then we can act like it never happened.
Even though it was much broader in American history, we can pretend that only slave owners used it. Mm-hmm. And they used it in very negative light, in a very negative moment. And the average American just really didn't use it. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I really think that, I do believe, obviously, there's a handful of people like me that just detest the word altogether, think it's a horrible word, think that, it shouldn't be said at all. I don't disagree with that. I know there was a time where I felt, too, that I did not think that anybody should be saying it. I definitely didn't understand why black people would want to say it. But then I began to learn from you and from other people of color, what that word actually means to you now.
Sure. Well, it's pretty simple. If you, in a lot of ways, if you're being shot at, and you have the ability to repackage that bullet, right? You want to take that bullet that's been shot at you, and you want to use it for the good,
Right.
And so, a lot of times, what people don't realize is that Black people were destroyed by that word. They were caged by that word.
Yeah.
They were made to feel like animals by that word. And then you have people like Paul Mooney, Richard Pryor, who come along and they begin to use it in a way that basically said to counterculture, to the people on the other side using that word, sticks and stones may break my bones,
Yeah.
but words will never hurt me.
Right.
Right.
Hey everybody, I hope you've enjoyed the video so far. There was a lot to talk about.
There
There's
really
actually
was.
still a lot more to address and really digest.
Part 2 is my favorite part.
So please stay tuned to part 2. We wanted to give you an opportunity to really listen to the things that we thought were important to discuss. So we wanted to break it up for you, give you more time to do that. So make sure you come back for part 2.
Crazy how in depth the N word is, and I love us getting into Paul Mooney and Richard
Right.
Pryor. Hey, listen, we want to thank you for being a part of this podcast. The Lionheart Institute podcast would be absolutely nothing without you, without your likes, without your comments, without your interactions. So thank you for doing that. I want to encourage you to do the same on this video. Please do like, please do comment, and share the video if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
But most importantly, what we really are in need of right now is subscribers. So
Yeah, absolutely. The more people subscribe, the more videos we get to do, the more time we get to spend with you. So make sure you click that bell so you don't miss any notifications, and make sure your friends and family come check us out.
absolutely.
See you in part 2.